Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of 30 Albums for 30 Years, 1964 through 1994, where we evaluate the most impactful albums during those years. I am your host, Jay Sweet, and today's episode we will be checking out the album Chuck Berry, St. Louis to Liverpool, on Chess Records, released November 1964, recorded between December of 1957 and August of 1964. Let's get into it. Chuck Berry's St. Louis to Liverpool. Alright, so let's learn a little bit about the man, Chuck Berry. Nobody was more important to the development of rock and roll sounds and traditions than Chuck Berry. In his prime, he was perhaps the most fantastic guitarist, singer, songwriter, and entertainer. Berry grew up in St. Louis to a middle-class family. His father was a contractor and a deacon, and his mother was a school principal. As a youth, Berry began playing the guitar, and while in high school, he was arrested for armed robbery for stealing a car and threatening the driver at gunpoint. This would not be his only legal issue. So at reformatory school, he formed a singing group, and at age 21, he was released. He then got married, fathered a child, and worked at an auto assembly plant as a janitor. Berry then trained as a beautician at a cosmetology school. In the early 1950s, Berry began working as a musician at local clubs, where he showcased borrowed licks and moves from blues legend T-Bone Walker. Check him out. Starting in 1954, Chuck Berry began to record as a solo artist for the small ballad label. In 1955, he moved to Chicago, where he came to the attention of bluesman Muddy Waters, who then introduced him to Leonard Chess of Chess Records. He recorded Maybelline for Chess Records, which sold over 1 million copies. In 1956, he recorded the rock anthem Roll Over Beethoven, and dozens of other hits followed, like Rock and Roll Music, Sweet Little 16, and Johnny Be Good. Chuck Berry was now a major star, and the only bluesman to fully break into white markets. He also began to appear in films, and was showcased in Rock, 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 1956, Jazz on a Summer's Day, 1958, and Go, Johnny, Go, 1959. So after a half of a decade of incredible success, Chuck Berry's life and popularity came to a significant halt when he was arrested for having sexual relations and transporting a 14-year-old white girl across state lines. For the crime, Berry spent a year and a half in prison. He was released in 1963 and immediately returned to recording and releasing hits. By this time, British groups like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Animals, and the Kinks recorded many of his songs and began having tremendous success. And in response to his music's success with other artists, Berry began touring the UK and releasing his comeback album, St. Louis to Liverpool. Despite being able to retain a lucrative touring schedule, the studio hits began drying up for Chuck Berry in the late 1960s. Prison and being constantly ripped off disenfranchised Berry from the music business. Seemingly uninterested in anything more than making money, Chuck Berry toured regularly and mostly used local pickup bands, who more often than not were not up to Chuck Berry's level. He did this to avoid paying a working band's travel costs and higher wages. Naturally, the music suffered. After recording for Mercury Records from 1966 through 1969, Chuck Berry returned to Chess Records in 1970, and in 1972, he released his first hit in years, a naughty novelty tune called My Ding-a-Ling, which was his only #1 hit. It would also be his last hit. By the end of 1970, Berry stopped recording, and his performances became even more uneven and often disappointing. Bruce Springsteen And others who once backed Chuck Berry said the guitarist did not even provide a set list or talk to the band before or after performances. In 1979, Chuck Berry faced legal troubles again when he pleaded guilty to tax evasion, which led to 4 months in prison and 1,000 hours of community service. In the 1980s, Berry continued playing a series of one-nighters, schlepping his guitar nationwide. In 1986, Berry turned 60 years old and things started to look up. During the year, he was featured in the documentary film Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll and inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The positivity was short-lived, however, because in 1987 he was charged with sexual assault. Then in 1990, he was sued for secretly filming women in the bathroom at a restaurant that he owned. He settled the matter outside of court and was forced to pay over $1 million. Things worsened when Berry was arrested for marijuana possession and child abuse charges, which were dropped. Then came the disturbing videos of Berry being involved with some truly disgusting acts with women. In 2017, Chuck Berry died. Now, musicians are not meant to be role models necessarily. So for the purposes of this podcast, I ask that we overlook many of Berry's shortcomings as an individual, because despite his many flaws, Chuck Berry was an absolute rock and roll pioneer whose music still sounds fresh and incredible. Alright, Kat, so it's time to take a trip from St. Louis to Liverpool. Let's drop the needle on side number 1, track number 1 of this fantastic album. Track 1 is Little Marie, a strong opener and an instant reminder to British imitators that Chuck Berry was the originator. And he is back, and he's better at playing Chuck Berry tunes than a bunch of young white dudes reinterpreting his songs. This track was released as a single, reaching number 54 on the Billboard charts. Track number 2 is Our Little Rendezvous, a high-flying blues. First we met Marie, and now with this tune we meet Susie. The tune is short and it is sweet, and take notice of guitarist Matt "Guitar" Murphy and longtime collaborators Willie Dixon on the double bass and pianist Johnny Johnson. The third track is the big hit from the album, No Particular Place to Go. It is the ultimate song to cruise to. The song was first issued as a single in 1964 and is a reinterpretation of an earlier Berry hit, School Days. Chuck Berry would do this often. He was kind of a bit of a one-trick pony, but the thing is he did that trick really, really well. The song tells the story of a guy who's riding with his girlfriend. They cuddle up in the car, and then they decide to take a walk, probably to find a place to hook up. But the seatbelt is stuck. The narrator gets no play and just winds up driving the girl home. The tune reached number 10 on the charts, a much-needed hit for the legend. It's a great tune, with some signature Chuck Berry solo licks. Check it out, because really, where are you going? You have no particular place to go. The next track is U2, which shows versatility regarding harmony, feel, and lyrics. It's a jazzy, feel-good tune in which the narrator plans to throw a country cookout. Check out pianist Paul Williams, because he plays a pretty fine solo on this track. And the tune is reminiscent of a lot of the music of Nat King Cole, one of my favorites. It's a great tune that was never issued as a single. So in the words of Chuck Berry, let's roast some wieners, toast the buns, drink some rounds, and listen to some jazzy sounds. Let's hang out and enjoy the tune U2. Up next is Promised Land, which is set to the melody of the American folk classic Wabash Cannonball. It was Berry's first single after being released from his incarceration after violating the Mann Act. The song was written in prison and listed several American cities as the narrator travels from Norfolk, Virginia to the Promised Land of Los Angeles, California. Berry wrote the song with the help of an atlas he borrowed from a prison library. It's a solid track and deserving of higher chart position. It only reached number 41. Elvis Presley recorded the tune in 1974. The final track of side number 1 is a good one. It's called You Never Can Tell, which is also known as C'est la vie. The tune was created by Berry when he was in prison. Take notice of the signature piano licks by longtime collaborator Johnny Johnson and the well-written background horn lines. The song tells the story of the wedding and the life of a married teen couple. The tune served as the B-side to No Particular Place to Go. You Never Can Tell was popularized in the classic 1994 film Pulp Fiction. Now, sometimes even a B-side can chart well, and this one reached number 14. I guess you never can tell. All right, it's record flipping time. Let's do it. Let's check out track number 1 of side number 2, which is Go Bobby Soxer. A Bobby Soxer is a young female pop music fan and a term that was often used in the 1940s. The song is basically Johnny B. Good, with some sloppily played drum fills and more prominent piano playing. Berry choosing to sing about a young female fan after his legal ordeal was probably not the wisest decision. It's a pretty good song though. Go Bobby Soxer. Track number 2 of side number 2 is The Things That I Used to Do, which is one of 2 songs not written by Berry on the album. The song was actually written by blues legend guitarist Slim, who had a hit with the song in 1953. The slow blues is an apology song stating, "The things that I used to do, Lord, I won't do no more." It may be Berry's way of admitting past guilt. Of course, he continued to do terrible things. There's some great guitar playing on this one, but the mix could be a little better balanced. The Things That I Used to Do. Okay, instrumental track alert. Track number 3 is Liverpool Drive, which is the first of 2 instrumental tracks, but it is pretty awesome. It's a fast blues shuffle that showcases Berry's skills as a guitarist, which was pretty remarkable for its time. When it comes to rock and roll guitar playing in 1964, nobody was stronger than Chuck Berry. The band sounds pretty awesome as well. So enjoy this one, Liverpool Drive. Track number 4 is another instrumental called Night Beat. The song is played at a slower tempo with drummer Odie Payne providing a solid backbeat until he turns the beat around at the 2-minute mark. So it's like a clear mess up, and they left it. It's amazing how they left in this apparent mistake, and it's also pretty remarkable how the band was able to recover from this rhythmic hiccup, if you will. Check it out. Night Beat. Hey, Merry Christmas, baby. No, I haven't gone completely mad. I know if you're listening to this in real time, it's only April. I'm only partially nuts. That's the name of the tune. Merry Christmas, Baby, written by Lou Baxter and Johnny Moore, which is a slow, soulful blues with a Christmas theme. The track was released as a single, charting at only number 71. Take notice of the White Christmas quote during the guitar solo. Special praise should be given to pianist Johnny Johnson on this one, as he solos basically throughout the track. And once again, it sounds like drummer Odie Payne's beat gets a little goofy around the 2-minute and 50-second mark, but it seems to matter little because bass legend Willie Dixon is as solid as a rock. So check it out. Christmas in April. Merry Christmas, Baby. The final track is a jump blues called Brenda Lee. So Brenda Lee now joins the cast of female characters featured on this album. The song tells the story of Brenda Lee's high school years. Now, Brenda Lee was a famous American singer with 47 hit songs throughout the 1960s. She was a child star. Only Elvis, the Beatles, and Ray Charles had more. I still think that someone should have advised Berry, given his legal issues, to choose themes that didn't concern teen girls. Check it out. Track number 6, the final track of the original LP, Brenda Lee. All right, my friends, we did it. We made it to the end of the record, and we are better for it. So lift the needle off the record and, put it away safely. And here are some final thoughts. From St. Louis to Liverpool was critical in reintroducing Berry to the public after his incarceration. Now, instead of hearing the Beatles and the Stones and other British invader players offering lesser interpretations of Chuck Berry's songs, we get the authentic thing with From St. Louis to Liverpool. Now, surprisingly, the album charted at only 124. This is especially surprising because it had 2 top 15 hits. Even more remarkable is that it was Chuck Berry's highest charting album to that point, which is pretty wild when you consider that Berry was arguably the most significant creator of rock and roll. All right, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the album. And this was our 25th episode. So if things work out the way they're supposed to, there's only 875 more to go. My God, what am I doing? All right, anyway, I'll contemplate that later. If you're interested in learning more about the podcast, past episodes, upcoming episodes, you can go to 30albumsfor30years.com. We're also on social media, so you can check us out on Instagram and Facebook. I do have a book out called The History of American Music, 1750 through 1950, an origin story, and you can get that through Kendall Hunt Publishers. And as always, let's together keep this music alive. Have a wonderful day.